Hi, welcome back to Two Minds Unfiltered.
And today we have a really exciting case for you guys.
Yes, we are talking the cold case, the infamous cold case of the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I know, me too. This is.
Oh yeah. You even drew a Black Dahlia flower.
I drew a Black Dahlia flower.
The words. Because this case is like, there's so much that we need to cover. This is actually going to be a two-part episode. Just because there's so much that we need to cover, and a lot of theories that we have. So yes.
So just a warning, this episode, in this case, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Black Dahlia case, but it is quite graphic, and it kind of has to be because we have to describe the case in detail-ish because, it pertains to really important information. So viewer discretion is advised for this one. I would not recommend anyone that's either squeamish or doesn't like kind of the gory stuff.
We're not gonna go into like depth on it, but it's definitely it's for mature audiences.
Yes. So
should we get started? So Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, was born on July 24th in 1924. Roaring 20s in Boston, Massachusetts.
She was the third of 5 daughters.
Born to Phoebe and Cleo.
Yes, which I thought was a really interesting name for a man.
Cleo?
Yeah.
Cleo Alvin Short Jr.
I've actually never heard that name for a man ever before.
He was born in 1885!
Yeah. His wife's name was Phoebe May Sawyer. She was born in 1897. So her father was a U.S. Navy sailor? Jesus Christ. Her father was a U.S. Navy sailor from Virginia. Her mother was originally from Maine. She was from Millbridge, Maine, to be specific. And they got married in Portland, Maine in 1918.
So after he got out of the Navy, it said that he built miniature golf courses.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting.
Interesting and also very random, but I don't know the man, so.
Yeah, but then he lost almost all of his life savings in the stock market crash of 29.
Yeah.
Which I found to be very interesting because then the US was like devastated at that point, honestly.
It was a bad time.
I did look him up and I couldn't find too much on his like mental health background, but I was wondering if, that contributed to maybe he had like underlying depression or something.
Oh, I mean, after losing all of your money, how could you not?
Yeah.
As
in 1930, his car was found abandoned on the Charlestown Bridge, and it was assumed that he had jumped into the Charles River, which I thought, maybe the depression like caused him to fall into a deep depressive episode, and that's why he staged his own unalivement.
Yes, and obviously everyone else believed it because his wife, Elizabeth's mother, then had to pick up the slack and go work as a bookkeeper to help support the family because he was the sole breadwinner. Like, he was making all of the money. Back then, obviously, the women didn't really.
They were homemakers
as much.
More.
And, but then obviously when, the whole stock market thing went down, they were already broke. And then when presumed dead, they're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Now I need to bring in the money.
It's also said that she struggled with bronchitis a lot, and she had severe asthma attacks. So by the age of 15, she actually underwent lung surgery.
Yeah, it's just pretty extensive for a 15-year-old or anyone, honestly. That's a huge surgery.
So then the doctors told her that she should like relocate to a more milder climate because up north is like pretty cold. So she moved down to spend time with or at least spend the winters with family friends in Miami.
Yes. For the next 3 years, she did that. She would go down during the winter months to Florida.
She dropped out of Medford High School during her sophomore year.
Yes.
Which is like pretty early, honestly.
Yes, and I couldn't find a reason as to why. Was it because of her medical issues, or was it just because
I think because she didn't want to do school, she just wanted to be an actress. She wanted to be on the silver screen.
That is true. She always wanted to be
an
actress. But, plot twist,
Yeah.
Major plot twist. You ready for this? In 1942, her mom received a letter of apology from her presumed dead husband, and he revealed that he was alive and well and started a new life in California.
Yes, so at the age of 18, and like keep in mind, right? So Short was probably she was 6 years old when he like faked his death.
Yes.
And so she like when she found out that he was out in he was in Vallejo, California.
Mm-hmm.
So when she found out that he was alive and doing his own thing out there, at the age of 18, she relocated out to Vallejo to live with him.
Yes.
She barely knew the man.
Yes.
Sure.
But she obviously had a dream, and she knew, California was where Hollywood movie stars were made, because at the time this was when the films were just starting to pop off and all these newfound actors were getting popular, and she's like, that's where I need to go. Can we just go back to a minute? I feel like we just blew over the fact that he faked his death, and he was just like, let me send her a letter real quick and be like, by the way, I'm alive. You wanna come hit that?
He's just kind of like, yeah, sorry. My life fell apart and I, couldn't handle it anymore. And now I'm living my best life out here.
The thing is, like, why would you need to fake your own death? You could have just talked about it and be like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to leave, if separate. But it's just like he created this whole spectacle of literally stage his car and pretending like he jumped off.
I know.
I was just like, what? Oh, but I did read that, like in the letter, it was like stating that he was insinuating like, oh, she should come with him, like meet up with him in California, and she was like, no. She's like, first of all,
I did see that. Yeah.
She was like, first of all, I thought you were dead, and now you're telling me you're fine and well, and I've been spent all this time working and doing all this, taking care of our children that you left behind.
Yeah.
She's like, no, actually, I'm fine. I really don't want you anymore. Yeah. I was like, girl, boss move. Honestly,
yeah, girl boss
on her part. Love her
for
that.
you.
Exactly.
What a standout guy.
Really, what a father of the year, husband of the year.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why she kind of like went after these like married men and like.
Because she probably saw that like married men.
They had their shit together.
Well, apparently they don't.
I guess not. That's our little
That really rattled me.
I was like, when I first read this like years ago, I was like, what a stand-up guy.
Mind you, she's been researching this for years. This is her favorite case. I'm only just now getting like really into it, and I thought that was the last plot twist of the story.
Oh no. There were a lot of, obviously, because she didn't really know her dad that well. Because she hadn't.
I'm sorry, I'm really hot. Okay.
She actually was forced to like leave his home. Because they argued. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so she ended up moving in with like a friend that was out there.
Yeah.
Actually, she lived with like a few friends.
Yeah, she hopped around a few times.
Yeah.
Well, because after she moved out, she got a job. And she was working at a base exchange at Camp Cook, but it's now Vandenberg Space Force Base.
She technically was like a waitress or something.
She also did work as a waitress. Yes. But that was later. Sorry. Yes, I believe her longest job was, because when she relocated, she had a different job. Yeah. Yes, that's coming up. Sorry. She was briefly living with a United States Army Air Force sergeant who reportedly abused her. So,
she's already starting off.
So I would say not off. Yeah, she's not off to a great start.
And then in 1943, she was arrested for underage drinking.
Yeah.
At a local bar.
Yeah.
And then the authorities, the juvenile authorities specifically, they sent her back to Massachusetts, but she returned to Florida.
Yeah, instead. She refused to go back to Massachusetts. She's like, I'm going with Florida. Florida's at least better than Massachusetts.
I mean, I don't know what, Florida looked like in 40s, so.
Yeah, I actually have no idea.
Maybe it was all that.
But while she was in Florida, she met another man, Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr. That's a mouthful. Jeez,
again, another military man.
They would actually, they would like pen pal each other back and forth because he was overseas in Japan. I think.
South?
India, sorry. He was fighting overseas in India, and they were pen pals.
Yeah.
And allegedly he proposed to her over a letter because they promised to get married when he came home, which he was coming home not too long after sending that letter.
Yeah, my theory on this is that it says here he was recovering from injuries from a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he thought he was dying and he's like, I'm gonna propose to this woman so then I can be married. Like, I don't know.
And also, dating worked a lot differently back then too. Like, they didn't take their time. They didn't take years to get married. Most of the time, these people were getting married months after knowing each other. Yeah. But that's also because they met up a lot more in person than we do. So, like, they would actually go out on physical dates instead of just texting over the phone. So
then it was just carrier pigeons.
Exactly, carrier pigeons and a quill. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta send an owl.
Okay, Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly.
Sadly, before they ever even got to marry, he died in a second crash on August 10th, 1945.
All the men in her life are just leaving.
This one might have been a good one. Who knows?
Maybe she'll never know.
She no. In July 1946, she relocated to Los Angeles to visit an Army Air Force friend, Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Bickling, that she had met in Florida. And she spent the last 6 months of her life in Southern California working as a waitress, but wanted to be an actress. This was like she really wanted to be an actress, but she never actually got any jobs or credits, but she would always be described by her friends as a would-be actress.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if you look at pictures, like, she's a beautiful young woman.
Yeah, she was very attractive, and every man wanted her.
Yeah. She's like a siren.
She killing all the men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Alright, so on January 9th, 1947, she returned to her home in LA after a brief trip to San Diego with Robert Red Manley. So basically, they called him Red because his hair was red and it stuck, and so everyone calls him Red. So I'm probably going to refer to him as Red. Yeah. Because that's just what they call him. Mind you, he is a 25-year-old married salesman. Okay? Keep that in mind. That she was dating. And so basically, how he met her. This is how beautiful. This is the impact she had for some of these men. Yeah. He was literally driving down the street and he saw her standing at the bus stop and he's like, she's so beautiful, I have to pull over. So he literally pulled over, went to the bus stop, and he was trying to talk to her. She really wasn't having it. She was kind of like, I mean, I'm sure she was talking to him, but she was like, no, I don't really, good day, have a good day. Yeah. But then he goes, because like he was not giving up. He's like, no, this girl's really pretty. I need to continue to talk to her. He's like, well, do you need a ride home? Now, mind you, this is the 40s, so they didn't have the whole stranger danger type thing that we would now. Because if someone just asked, do you need a ride home, and I didn't know them, that's a huge red flag. Let's be honest here. And she said yes. And so basically, that's kind of how they started. So they were talking the whole time on the car ride. And then eventually they just kept meeting up for dinner and drinks, and it went on there. It was nothing serious, but they were seeing each other for a few months. He was the last one to see her before she died. She was dropping her off at the Biltmore Hotel, and that she was supposed to meet one of her sisters who was visiting from Boston that afternoon, but she was not seen again the next morning. They saw her walking around the hotel the morning afterwards, but shortly after that, she was no longer seen.
And then it says, later she was seen by patrons of the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge. Yes. About a fourth of a mile from the Biltmore. So she wasn't too far.
No, when she got dropped off at the hotel, that's when she went to the lounge.
Yes.
But the next day, they saw her in the morning when she left the hotel, but they never saw her after that.
Yeah, it says that she was missing for about a week.
Yes, like 6 days. Basically, after some staff accounted that they recalled seeing her in the hotel, apparently she was seen using the lobby telephone, which that became apparently an important thing because they think that call was with her murderer.
Yeah, because it's most likely she was most likely killed by someone she knew.
Yes, because knowing her, I don't know her, but it seems like she was very nitpicky in who she knew, and she was only ever hanging out with people that she did know and like. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling she probably wouldn't willingly go with a stranger, more or less, other than Red. So it must have been someone she knew if she went willingly. But I don't know. Maybe she didn't go willingly. Who knows?
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah. But on the morning of January 15th in 1947, her body was found naked by a local resident. So Betty Bersinger and her 3-year-old were walking and came across what they thought was a discarded mannequin, which makes sense because when I described to you what her body looked like,
yeah,
I've looked at like pictures extensively, and
we won't show those to you,
No.
but warning, if you ever look up her case, they are right on Google.
yeah.
So just beware.
So we won't show them to you, but feel free if you want. If you're curious, that is your prerogative to look up those pictures.
Yes,
I have looked at them.
Yes, and they're there, smack dab in the center.
Yes. You know, they just thought it was like a discarded mannequin. It's not uncommon, like just for someone.
No,
to just,
and
like,
also the way she was obviously,
yeah,
put out there, I could see why.
It said the crime scene. The body was posed with the arms over the head and in the elbows at right angles,
Yes.
which is very specific.
Mm-hmm. Very meticulous.
Diagram. I'm gonna draw a little diagram.
We're drawing a diagram.
This is the field, or the vacant lot.
I was gonna say, yeah, it was nothing yet.
It was undeveloped land. Like land. It was just
yeah.
And then we're gonna make a colorful diagram.
Wow.
So she was posed like this, and then the bottom half was like over here. So yes, she was found like that, and she was severely mutilated.
Yes.
Clearly by my diagram, because she was bisected, which, if you don't know what that means, is she was cut in half. And what I find interesting is that was actually a medical practice in the 30s. It was taught in medical school. It's called, sorry to my med-term professor. I'm so sorry, I'm gonna really botch this. It is called a hemicorporectomy. Actually, I didn't botch it too bad.
That was really good, buddy.
I'm proud of that. I thought it was interesting that that's actually a medical practice, cutting someone in half. That was taught in medical school.
Yeah, like what purpose does that do for
Exactly.
someone?
That's why I was like, interesting. We will show you where exactly, like in the body, because it states it in the autopsy, and I made a little diagram. I'm very proud of it, actually. But yes, she was bisected at the waist. And it says that her body was completely drained of blood, which gave her a pallid complexion. So she was like stark white.
She really was. She was like
a mannequin.
Honestly, she was void of color.
Yes. And at the scene, there was a container of like watery blood, a heel print, and a entire track.
Yes, it was like an old cement bucket that was filled with dirty, bloodied water.
Mm-hmm. And like her body had been washed by the killer. And it was, like, very obvious that she had been killed somewhere else because there was no blood at the scene, other than, like, that container of bloody water.
Yeah.
Like I said, there was no blood at the scene, and her killer was very meticulous because, obviously, to do that, you have to be.
Yeah.
But here's, like, the interesting part. It was very neat. So when they examined her body, so the duodenum is the section of, like, it's the first portion, and again, I will put a picture up so you can get my, whole reference. I should have printed this out.
I say they can't see it anyway
because I want a picture.
Okay.
So the duodenum is the first portion of the GI tract. It's right below the stomach, actually, and this was tucked up into the top portion, into her, like, upper half. Mm-hmm. And then her, like, small intestines and large intestine were tucked neatly under her buttocks.
Yes.
And then she was bisected between the lumbar sections L2 and L3, which, if you don't know, that's your lower back. Mm-hmm. Again, I will put up my diagram that I so graciously made. Like I said, it was clear that she was killed somewhere else and then just dumped there.
Yeah, well...
But she wasn't just dumped. No. She was, like, purposefully put.
She was posed.
And, like... to be cut in half that cleanly, because it didn't say that there was hacking or anything. It was
there was no. They said there was no bruising around the cut, so it had to have been after she was dead.
Yes. And that takes skill to cleanly cut somebody in half. Not that I know how to. I don't know how to do that. I would never know how to do that because it's not a practice taught today. I don't think. I don't think it's taught in medical school.
I don't know.
Unless it's like an extreme case where you need that.
I don't know where you would, but all right.
I don't know either. The killer had also cut into her face. There were also like different portions of her body that had been like kind of cut up too.
Yes, and there was parts of her body that the skin was even removed.
Yeah.
And apparently it was really meticulously cleaned.
Yes.
So hard that they actually found some of the bristles in the cuts.
Yeah. Like scrubbing it.
Like literally scrubbing her like so clean that there's no trace whatsoever.
Yeah. But he cut into her face at the corners of her lips to give her a Glasgow smile. So if you don't know what that is the Joker smile. Creepy, because I saw a picture. I was actually, doing research, and I was just like fascinated by this because I wanted to like see her.
That picture is like literally embedded into my head.
I was doing some digging, and like the black and white pictures, like I can handle looking at that. I was watching a video, and I saw it in color. It made me sick. It was like it made her a person. To like see it in black and white is different, but like when you see it in color,
it kind of gives you a different perspective.
Yeah,
like this is not just like an illustrated drawing. It's like this is a real life photo of a human being. And
it like the color, like black and white, obviously, like it's still hard to look at because it is
gruesome.
It is gruesome. Yeah, you could see like the bruising on her face, and like it was just gruesome, and it just made me sick.
Which means, and some speculate. I mean, obviously, even the doctors. Like, it happened while she was alive. Like, he gave her the Joker smile while she was alive because of the bruising. And it was starting to try and clot, because obviously it was probably trying to heal alive, because she was tortured.
Yes. So. And I will read you an excerpt from the autopsy, because it is very important that we go over that. But, her lower half was positioned about a foot away from the upper half. And like I said, that her like intestines and everything was like neatly tucked away. So like it was like clean. Like you just remove the top half of a mannequin and just
honestly
put it in a vacant like lot. So I will read this excerpt from the autopsy. So there were ligature marks on her ankles, wrists, and neck, and an irregular laceration with superficial tissue loss on her right breast. Examiner Newbar also noted superficial lacerations on the right forearm, left upper arm, and lower left side of the chest. The body had been cut completely in half by a technique taught in the 1930s called a hemicorporectomy. The lower half of her body had been removed by transecting the lumbar spine between the second and third lumbar vertebrae, thus severing the intestines at the duodenum. Newbar's report noted very little ecchymosis, which is bruising, along the incision line, suggesting that it had been performed after death. Another gaping laceration measuring 108 millimeters in length ran longitudinally from the umbilicus to the suprapubic region.
Which basically we don't know. It's like from your lower navel to your uterus area. Yes.
The lacerations on each side of her face, which extended from the corners of the lips, were measured at 76 millimeters on the right side of the face and 64 millimeters on the left. It wasn't meticulous enough to make them even, but...
No, I guess not. But at the same time, if he was doing it while she was alive, she was probably wiggling around.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Because, like, it literally, the one went almost all the way up to her, her ear.
The skull was not fractured, but there was bruising noted in the front and right side of her scalp, with a small amount of bleeding in the subarachnoid space on the right side, consistent with blows to the head. She was bludgeoned to death.
Yes.
It's just mind-boggling. But, the cause of death was determined to be hemorrhaging from the lacerations on her face and the shock from blows to the head and face. So Newbar noted that Short's rectal canal was dilated, about 44 millimeters, suggesting that she was assaulted.
Yes.
And there were samples taken from her body, but nothing came back with, it came back negative. So she was probably assaulted with like an object.
I would say with a non-human object, yeah.
Yes. I know that I threw a lot of, like, medical terminology at you.
That's okay.
But, that gives you an idea of what exactly she, like, endured and then what occurred after to get you to the point of this.
Yeah, and mind you,
so
she was mutilated to the point where she was somewhat unrecognizable, kind of, because obviously the Joker smile took up half of her face. So for a long time, they couldn't just look at her and identify her. So thankfully, she was already in the system when they took her fingerprints, because obviously when she was arrested, that's the only reason why they found who she was. Yeah, she was almost about to be a Jane Doe if they hadn't had her fingerprints in the system, because she was so mutilated. And also, when he cleaned her meticulously, he cleaned her with gasoline.
I saw that, yeah.
Because he wanted, there was, no trace of anything. So it kind of disintegrated her fingertips, so it made it even more difficult. So,
which was very intentional, I'm obviously assuming.
Yes. So back then, they didn't really have reporters, and the police worked together in tandem.
Yes.
Okay, they were very close. Anything the police did, the reporters were probably kind of like their little mini detectives most of the time, because they're kind
of like puppies. They just kind of like follow after, and they're like, "Oh, I got this bit of information."
Yeah, because they can get information that the police couldn't.
Yeah.
One sick and twisted thing that happened, because obviously the journalists were all over the story. I mean, this was a huge deal. This was before people really had any privacy. This one reporter called Elizabeth's mother, and she pretended that she was from a modeling agency, and it was like a pageant that her daughter had won. And she was calling to ask her questions about what to write for the little blurb about her daughter winning. And so obviously her mom was ecstatic. Her mom was really happy that she finally got what she went out there to do, not knowing that her daughter's dead, because this is not out yet. She had no idea, and she willingly told her everything. And then after she told her everything, the reporter finally said, "I had to break it to you, but I'm actually not that type of reporter. Your daughter died. She got murdered." And I'm like,
yeah, she just wanted, or not. They just wanted personal information.
Yeah, like how messed up is that? That they literally called her mother and pretended to be something, and then all of a sudden it was like, actually, I was lying. Your daughter has like been brutally murdered.
Yeah, so they ended up paying for, like, the Examiner paid for Short's mother to fly out there and help with the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like any little information was gonna help, because they literally were a lost cause with this case. So yeah.
Okay, so there are actually multiple theories that surround how the Black Dahlia became the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
So in my previous research, there was a lot of air that I didn't mean to. I got a little too excited. So after the murder, like pretty quickly actually after the murder.
Yeah, only like a few days.
Yeah. Short was given the name the Black Dahlia, and there are like many different like speculations that surround this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that one of them is that she maybe like adorned her hair with a dahlia flower, or that she wore like sheer black clothes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very interesting because I mean, and we will put up a picture of like a black dahlia flower. I mean, this is kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, but I'll put up a real black dahlia flower.
I think that she wanted to be in show business. She wanted to be on the silver screen, and I think that she may have dressed more like Marilyn Monroe, kind of, almost like that. She
dressed a little more eccentric.
Yes, and more like, I belong here. I belong in show business. I kind of,
Yeah, she did fit in with LA.
She did,
well,
yes.
I will say, and I don't mean that in a diss or bad way. I'm just saying she fit in their lifestyle very well, but she just also realized just how bad that lifestyle was very quickly. Another theory that I read about her name was that because, like you said, she was a lover of film, actress, like she wanted to be one, right? They apparently stated that possibly it was because of her favorite film was The Blue Dahlia. It was a film, I don't know when it was filmed, I'll put the poster up.
Yeah.
And that because she was known for her beautiful, luscious, dark hair, that they kind of just took the two and called her the Black Dahlia. And don't forget, this time and age, every time that they had a case, they would name them. Like, they had to have a name for them. So.
Yeah.
Put it on there.
Just to like she had jet black hair. Like yeah. So
Dark black. Yes.
yeah. So those are a couple theories that are held around how the Black Dahlia came to be. So now we're moving on to suspects and like the investigation, the initial investigation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the police and examiner's office received many different confessions for the Black Dahlia killer, which I think is crazy, but it was a massive case, and it still is.
They
it's
received over 50 called-in confessions that claimed to be the Black Dahlia killer. They wanted the recognition.
Yes, and the examiner's office also received ransom notes from the killer, with items that belonged to Short, like her birth certificate, business cards, photographs, and like address book and other stuff as well. These items had been sent directly from the killer, but they had been cleaned with gas.
Gas.
It's doing so well.
I know, but I think I felt your motor stutter out on that one. You were losing your breath.
I was, yeah. They had been cleaned with gas, just like her body and other belongings, so the police were unable to lift any fingerprints from them.
Also, no, they had 750 investigators on this case. They literally called in everyone from like around the counties, even different states came in to try and solve this case because it was like when I tell you this case blew up.
This case is huge. It's still, it's like,
I mean, it's still unsolved to this day.
It's an infamous,
cold case?
Yeah. Couldn't think of the word.
I got you.
Thank you.
Like, the thing that was really upsetting was that, obviously, after the first 25 people that called in, they took most of them seriously because they were taking anything they could get. They were literally taking crumbs at this point. Yeah. Because the investigation, they talked to a bunch of people. Most of them were kind of irrelevant. So, when they found the address book, at first they thought it was hers because, it was apparently supposed to be on her body. But it was actually a guy named Mark Hansen's, and they went to go talk to him because obviously they were like, what the heck is this, because then they're thinking like, well, why is this random man's, book with her? A little backstory about Mr. Mark Hansen. He was a very, very wealthy man. Okay, he was a socialite. Yeah. Basically, one of the three main suspects was Mark Hansen. Ooh. How was it? Sorry, I use my hands when I talk. Apparently I use them to be aggressive.
You do, because you're just... That's all we get. It's like out of the sound. It's just...
Anyway, he was a very wealthy man, and he had a lot of connections. And he was a socialite. He owned a nightclub and a theater. He was a very wealthy man, very well known. Most people probably knew him around the area. But she also used to frequent there. And they went in when they found the shoe and stuff and the book. So one of her friends actually worked at the nightclub of Hansen. And she claimed that, yes, that was her shoe. And they asked why she had his address book. And he claims that they were pretty close. She would come in all the time and stuff like that. And she was also friends with his friends. So, like, they were in, like, a really close-knit circle. And apparently, at one point, she had been, like, staying with him or something like that. And so she wanted to get a hold of her friends and stuff, but she didn't know any of their numbers, so he gave her his address book. And that's how she ended up with the address book. And they took it, and they just left. And they're like, okay, fine, perfect.
It says here that Anne Toth, Short's friend and roommate, told investigators that Short had recently rejected sexual advances from Hansen, and that was a suggested motive for him to kill her.
Yes, because a little thing on Mr. Hansen. So they kind of called him this like pimp character. He was always kind of really nasty with the women, and he was always seen with a lot of them. He always wanted to be with them sexually. He was obsessed with Elizabeth.
Yes.
And he would try and get her all the time, and she was not having it. She was like, "No, you're kind of creepy. I don't like you." So she would reject him like almost daily.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And this angered him, obviously, because it hurt his pride. And like she was, let's just call her, she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Yeah, to most people. and they
She really stood out in a crowd.
She really did. She was very, very beautiful. And
she was a looker.
She was a looker.
Yeah, real looker.
Oh yeah, in life and in death.
You did not just say.
Basically, yeah. So this obviously angered him, and they believe that the motive was basically, if he can't have her, no one can.
Yeah.
Was basically what their theory was. But I don't know how true that was, because anger, yes. He could have obviously killed her, but he would have probably killed her more brutally.
Yeah. But it does say that he was cleared of any suspicion in the case.
Yes. But, this is where it gets a little fishy.
He could have, bought his, clearance.
Well, let's just say, back in the 40s, this was a very common practice when it came to wealthy and police. They would get, they would throw a little cash under the table, and certain things would just disappear.
They have a connection.
Yes.
Clearly, he was,
Yeah, so, because when they investigated, they quickly stopped investigating, and they claimed that they paid him off, and later the LAPD came out, and they're like, they disregarded all that. They're like, no, he didn't, but I'm like, I think he did. Mm-hmm. Even if he wasn't the murderer, I still think he kind of paid him off and was like, don't talk to me.
Yeah, don't ruin my, reputation, pretty much.
And they're like, okay.
So it says here that several of the false confessors were actually charged with obstruction of justice.
Yes, because they kept calling in.
Yes, and they were hindering justice, which actually never was served.
I was gonna say, they tried their hardest. Yeah. I will say they never didn't try. They didn't neglect this case. So our second suspect, that was one of our bigger ones that kind of correlates with the first one we talked about, was Leslie Dillon. He was a bellboy at the Biltmore Hotel, but previously he was a mortuary assistant. So, I mean, that didn't really look too good for him, did it? Like, if you're a mortuary assistant, you're around dead bodies all the time. You know how autopsies work. No, but, I'm not saying he knew how to, slice up bodies, but at the same time, he, knew what to look for. He's been around bodies. Obviously, he probably helped with, autopsies.
Yeah, and I mean, just being, in a morgue, couldn't think of the right word.
You got it.
But it doesn't necessarily, correlate directly to, them knowing how to dissect bodies, because, realistically, when they're in there, they're not dissecting bodies. I mean, maybe it was different back then, but today, it's not necessarily their intention is to dissect bodies. Mm-hmm. It's more of when you're doing an autopsy to figure out the cause of death, so you have specific cuts that you have to make. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm just saying, but he does know how to handle bodies after they're dead, because that was the big thing, is she was cut open like that, obviously after she was dead. And they think that there was also some of the stuff, the laceration she had gotten after she was dead also. And they do know how to drain everything from the bodies because,
True. That is a big thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought that was a unique connection to make because, yeah, he just happens to be a mortuary assistant.
If medical practices have changed. Obviously, certain things have, but as recent as 2017, a total of only 71 hemicorporectomies cases have been reported.
Oh, okay. So out of all the years that it's been available, only 71.
The first one was performed in 1950.
Oh, medically performed.
Yes, I wanted to know if it was still in practice today.
Gotcha.
Because I was again, that would kind of translate to mortuary stuff too. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to know. But they're for severe traumatic things.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to know if they were still in practice today.
Even Leslie was questioned because of his background, and funnily enough, he was friends with Mark Hansen. You good? And so they kind of connected the two, and they investigated both of them. Fun fact, of course I found this because of Book Lover herself. In 2017, so this was pretty recent.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this is a long, ongoing cold case. So, like, there's even
It's
people
still ongoing
now that are trying to figure out what it is. Well, Hugh Eatwell, or Eatwell as we'll call her, published a book and claimed that she solved the case and that Leslie was the one to do it. She was very adamant that he was the one to do it. She claimed that he was the hitman, the hired hitman, in quotations, for someone else. Well, that someone else was the good old Mark Hansen. The theory was that he was the main orchestrator of this murder, but that Leslie was the one who did the actual murdering. Because apparently one reason was because they killed her because she knew too much apparently about the men's involvement in a scheme of robbing hotels. So she was just she knew a little too much information. They still the theory too that he was scorned from her rejecting him all the time. But yeah, so they investigated it, quickly dropped it. That's where all the accusations of him getting, paying off the police came from.
Yeah.
And then they never opened that back up again. Back to the author. When she was looking into the case, this was actually really interesting. I don't know if you heard about this. I would be surprised if you didn't. She came across an account from a motel owner in the same area that like all of this happened in, named Henry Hoffman. I don't know if that name rings a bell. He owned a hotel a motel, sorry, called the Asta Motel.
Okay, yeah.
And apparently, he said that on January 15th, which was the morning that her body was found, he went to one of his rooms, or his cabins, as he called them, and found blood everywhere and also fecal matter, which was on the autopsy, because, when you have an open gland sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially incontinence after you're dead.
Yes,
too.
Because all your excrements come out after you're dead, yeah. And then, it gets even worse, in another room, there was a bundle of women's clothes covered in blood wrapped up in a brown paper. What do you think that, like, he should have done after finding all this? Like, realistically, if someone saw all this, like, what do you think they should have done?
I mean, obviously, the smart thing to do and the right thing to do is to call the police.
Yeah. What did he not do?
Call the police?
Yeah. You know what he did do? He cleaned it all up. Literally, like, cleaned everything, got rid of everything, spick and span, got rid of it all. And it's just like, we could have had that room be literally in the room that she died. The last piece of maybe possible actual, dead set evidence. And he cleaned it.
Outstanding Citizen Award.
But his reasoning was, I'll get this. He said, instead of telling the police, and he decided to clean it up, he stated it was because he just dealt with the police regarding a domestic issue with his wife previously, and he didn't want to deal with them again.
He's already an outstanding citizen.
So like, I don't think that if you called the police for a dispute on finding a bunch of blood, that they would probably not pin it on you if you're the one calling it in and you own the place. I get why, I guess you could be afraid that hurts your reputation, but like I mean, come on, man. There's no way you'd not like at least tell someone else then to tip it in.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate though.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, right? If he just dealt with the police over a domestic dispute, right?
Yeah.
Then, you're already like not on great terms with the police and law enforcement. You call the police after finding this like stuff, and they could try and pin it on him and say that he killed his wife. Or other things like that.
Yes,
exactly. So I get why he might not have done that, but
at the same time,
still, you got to take the chance because this could have been solving.
It literally could have been the literal room that she died in, and if it had any of her DNA in there, because obviously it was covered in it, they could have found out who stayed in that room, or at least just gotten even more of a lead of where she was when she died, because they had no idea. They didn't know when she died, really. They didn't know where. They didn't know how long she was dead for.
You never know.
No, and that's a good point. I'm not saying that that's not justifiable, because like, I get it.
Like I said, I was playing devil's advocate.
But at the same time, it's like,
dude.
Even if they did put it on you, that just means they're doing their job. Because
Exactly.
I mean, you're the last person there.
Who knows? But it is like, dude, come on, really?
Dude, those two were the bigger suspects. I mean, I feel like yes, the MO makes sense, but it also doesn't. Like it's more of like that would be a passion crime, not this meticulous.
There's a lot of things with this case that are not concrete, and so you
No,
just don't
so
know.
many loose ends.
And so that's what makes it. That's honestly what makes it such a captivating cold case.